one that's guiding our study. We're not using those as real strictness, but those are the ones that's the lesson that's guiding our study today anyway. We're going to be in Joshua chapter 6 in terms of scriptures, and then we'll be using lesson 17 as a guide as it relates to that study. Appreciate Randy Michael's work. He's teaching downstairs, but your eyes are not tricking you this morning. If you feel like you all are brighter than you all, that's because you all are. We're changing all of the lighting here inside the auditorium, and that side is done. This side has not been done yet, and so you all will look like they look within the next couple of weeks, hopefully. So, but anyway, I appreciate his work, and we've switched, we've modernized, and boy, we're nothing high tech here, but put some LED style lighting over on this side, and the same things are going on that side before we're done. Lesson 17 and Joshua chapter 6 is where we want to be this morning, because we need to start. We've wandered in the wilderness. We've dealt with the issues that Moses had to deal with. We've got them out of Egypt and all of the challenges that came along with that, and the difficulties surrounding their complaints and murmurings and the difficulties they created for themselves along the way. That generation failed, and so they were not permitted to enter into the promised land, save for, in terms of the fighting men age, Joshua and Caleb. And so in relationship to those two men, who has been exalted, if you will, or elevated, in Joshua, right? Joshua's been elevated into kind of the new Moses, if you will. He's going to lead the people and have the same kind of relationship with God in some senses that Moses did, as we saw in the text. And so Moses has died. Do they know where he was buried? No, God took care of that, and so they kind of know the general area where he went, but they don't necessarily know where exactly God had buried him. You come back and you have preparation time. They were about 13 miles away from, what's the first city they're going to go in and battle? Jericho. And so they're encamped over here, and they're about 13 miles from Jericho. And so they're going to come, and they're going to have to cross what to get to Jericho? They're going to have to cross the Jordan. All right? And we talked on Wednesday night about how God, just like He did in some senses with the Red Sea, some at least descriptive differences, but basically He parts the Jordan just like He did the Red Sea. But He parted in such a way, and we emphasized this on Wednesday, that the text said He parted as far north as Adam. The problem with that is we don't know exactly where that was. Nobody really knows historically, but we know it was well to the north. And so when He parts Jordan, or He dries it up in some senses, because He walls up the water to the north, and it dries clear down to where? Clear down to the Dead Sea, right? And so when you think about this imagery, and we talked about the fact that you're not talking about children going to the water fountain, right? What do they do when they go to the water fountain? They get in a single file line, right? You go to elementary school and they tell them line up. Well, the army of the Israelites is not lined up in a single file line walking across a small trail across the Jordan River. God walls it up for miles for them to be able to traverse across that river in order to go towards Jericho. And then they encamp not too far away from Jericho, close enough that the folks from Jericho know that these people are out there. But why didn't Jericho just open up the gates, send their army out, and go fight? Why didn't they just take the battle to them? Okay, that's not God's plan, number one. Okay, they'd heard of, and what if you remember what the text said, what the Bible said about that about the condition? Say that one more time, Ed. That's right. Their hearts melted. They didn't have the heart when they remembered what they had heard about the power and things of the God of Israel, and these folks are encamped outside of our walls. Their heart melted. They had no idea what they were going to be able to do or what they should do in this circumstance. That's where we are this morning as we begin to conquest, if you will, or walk with the Israelites as they conquest the promised land and begin to retake what God had intended for them from the beginning. And Jericho is going to be the first place that God accomplishes that, and He accomplishes it in such a way to bolster their confidence that God can deliver the land into their hands. In fact, He'll use miraculous means by which to do it, and completely unorthodox means by which to do it. One of the greatest military victories, and yet not much of a military action, was ever taking place when it comes to the conquest here of Jericho. So, Jericho was straightly shut up because of the children of Israel. None went out and none came in. So you're talking about a walled city, and you're talking about a gated city, and so it's completely on lockdown. Nobody's coming in, nobody's going out. And what's interesting is the Israelites, in most senses, haven't done anything but what? But eventually, but what have they done so far? Nothing, right? They're just there. But they know that to them that's a big enough of a threat that they've completely sealed off the city. No one's coming in, no one's going out. And so the Lord says to Joshua, "See, I have given into thine hand Jericho, and the king thereof, and the mighty men of valor. You shall compass the city, all ye men of war, and go around about the city once. Thou shalt do 6 days. And 7 priests shall bear before the ark 7 trumpets of ram's horns. And the 7th day ye shall compass the city 7 times, and the priests shall blow with the trumpets." So let me pause for a minute. Day 1 through 6 is very simple. Do what? Take a lap, right? Basically, go take a lap. 1 lap around and be done. That's it. And no other instructions given. That when you talk about the trumpets and the ram's horn, or the ram's horn trumpets, and the things that are going on the 7th day, those are isolated specific to the 7th day. So you got 6 days of just walking around it. And then on the 7th day, ye shall compass the city 7 times, and the priest shall blow with the trumpets, and it shall come to pass that when they make a long blast with the ram's horn, and when ye hear the sound of the trumpet, all the people shall shout with a great shout, and the wall of the city shall fall down flat, and the people shall ascend up every man straight before him. So, to me, it's interesting. Think about visually, if you can. It's kind of hard, but you think about, here they are. Here are the people. You've got this walled city, and they're not doing anything but walking around it. And if you've got any kind of visual from the city up on the wall or whatever it might be, you're looking down and they're not attacking. They're not saying anything yet. There's no noise. It's just walk around and go back to the camp. Day 2, walk around and go back to the camp. I don't know how many days of that you'd witness before you go, what are they doing? What's going on here? Are they coming to fight or are they not coming to fight? Are we going to be in a battle or are we not? Or do we need to arm ourselves? Completely unorthodox and unusual scene when you think about it. But then think about how their heart must have melted as well when the 7th day comes and the scene changes. And now they didn't stop after that first lap. Now they've made a 2nd lap, and a 3rd lap, and a 4th lap, and a 5th lap, and a 6th lap. And keep in mind, sizable enough city that has a wall all the way around it. And you're talking about all these thousands of people walking. So it's quite a traverse around and around and around. And then the horn sounds. And when the horn sounds, what do the people do when that blast comes? Okay, now the people were making noise. Before, just walking around. First 6 days, we're just walking around. But now there's signs that something's about to happen. So they shout with a great shout, and the wall of the city shall fall down flat, and the people shall ascend up, every man straight before him. Now, think about this for a second. Have you ever seen a wall that crumbled and fell? How many of them ever fall straight flat where you could just walk across it? Generally, they fall in a what? Well, but I mean, think about that. In a pile, right? In a pile. There's a heap. And generally speaking, you'd have to what then? Dig through it, climb over it. There would be something. God's miraculous ability to lead them into the conquest of Jericho even includes the fact that when the walls come down, they're not going to crumble into a heap. They're going to fall just flat so you can what? Just walk across. I mean, what God's allowing for them to accomplish here, all through His power and ability, is amazing. And yet they're going to have faith and confidence in God in order to accomplish that. They're going to have to trust that it's going to work. And the temptation would be, remember, what was the generation before them? Every time something seemed unorthodox or unusual, what was their mode? They would they'd murmur, complain. Sure, right, Joshua. You don't hear that. You can hear them saying that to Moses. Oh, sure, Moses. We're going to walk around this city and it's just going to fall flat and we're going to be able to walk. Yeah, I can see. You can hear their complaints. Not this generation. The faith and confidence of this generation of people, whether the 40 years of wandering in the wilderness has shaped that, whether they've just been more attentive to Moses' instructions during that time period, for whatever reasons you put in place, their level of faith and confidence in God is far greater than that of the generation before them, because they're doing exactly what God had said for them to do, and they're trusting that this is going to work, and that we're going to be able to conquest the land if we use God's means to accomplish that. So Joshua the son of Nun called the priest, and said unto them, Take up the ark of the covenant, and let 7 priests bear 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark. And he said unto the people, Pass on, and compass the city, and let him that is armed pass on before the ark of the Lord. And it came to pass, when Joshua had spoken unto the people, that 7 priests bearing 7 trumpets of ram's horns passed on before the Lord, and blew with the trumpets, and the ark of the covenant of the Lord followed them. And the armed men went before the priests that blew with the trumpets, and the rearward came after the ark, and the priests going on and blowing with the trumpets. So you can just visually see this scene happening. And Joshua had commanded the people, saying, You shall not shout, nor make any noise with your voice, neither shall any word proceed out of your mouth until the day I bid you shout. Then shall you shout. So not until you're instructed to do so. No noise. Just walk around. So they do that. And trying to fast forward a little bit into the narrative, but the second day they do the same thing, return to the camp. So they did, verse 14, for 6 days, did exactly what God had said. Now we're to the 7th day, verse 15. They rose up early, about the dawning of the day, and compassed the city after the same manner 7 times. Only on that day they compassed the city 7 times. And it came to pass at the 7th time, when the priest blew with the trumpets, Joshua said unto the people, Shout, for the Lord hath given you the city. And the city shall be accursed, even it and all that are therein, to the Lord. Only Rahab the harlot shall live, she and all that are with her in the house, because she hid the messengers that we sent. And so you recall we talked about those spies that had gone in to spy out Jericho, and how Rahab had protected them, and the agreement that was made between her and the spies was that she and her household, her family, would be protected when the armies came. And so, kind of a last instruction here to the people is that God is going to deliver this entire city. Only Rahab the harlot shall live, she and all that are with her in the house, because there was going to be an indicator. What was that? Yeah, that thread, right, that they would hang out, and they would be able to identify her household. And so as long as they're with her, they would be protected in this scene. You in any wise keep yourselves from the accursed thing, lest you make yourselves accursed when you take of the accursed thing, and make the camp of Israel a curse and trouble it. So with this conquest comes some warning. And there were certain things that Israel was not to have any part of. And don't be tempted to snag some of that when you go in to take over Jericho and bring it back. Run over to Deuteronomy chapter 7. Run back, I guess, in terms of your Bibles anyway. Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 25. Let's look at the instructions that were given. And why then this reminder of these instructions? Deuteronomy 7, verse 25. So the graven images of their gods shall you burn with fire. Thou shalt not desire the silver or gold that is on them, nor take it unto thee, lest thou be snared therein, for it is an abomination to the Lord thy God. Neither shalt thou bring an abomination into thine house, lest thou be a cursed thing like it, but thou shalt utterly detest it. Thou shalt utterly abhor it, for it is a cursed thing. And so the instructions as it relates to idols is don't be allured by it. Don't even the law seems to say don't rationalize and say, well, I don't want it as an idol. I want it because it's made of what? It's gold or silver. Yeah, it's nice, right? I look nice on my shelf over here in my tent, and if I decorate, my wife would really enjoy having some pretty things around. And I don't plan to bow down to it. I don't plan to worship it. I'm just going to have it. Or maybe somewhere down the road I need to purchase something and I'll have something of value, right? So you can hear the rationalization that might go through your mind. That I'm going to take it, but I'm going to take it for good reasons. And certainly none of those reasons are I'm going to bow down and start worshiping this thing. But God's instructions were, don't bring it back into your house at all. Because the temptation will be, you bring that into your house, you put it up on the shelf, and someday you might think to yourself, what? Maybe would it really hurt if I honored this God? Maybe things aren't going so well for me, and I think, well, I've been abandoned by Jehovah, so why not give this God a shot? And so they were to just detest all these things. And so when they're given these instructions in Joshua chapter 6 about, in many ways, how easy it's going to be for them to go in and conquest Jericho, then he reminds them that be careful, that you don't get lured into taking things that God has said you should detest and not have any part of, because you'll bring trouble back to yourself. And is that true, by the way? Yeah, we know that's true. If you fast forward in history, we know that to be true. Verse 19. But all the silver and gold and vessels of brass and iron are consecrated unto the Lord. They shall come into the treasury of the Lord, not to your house. They'll go in to benefit the whole nation. So the people shouted when the priest blew with the trumpets, and it came to pass when the people heard the sound of the trumpet, the people shouted with a great shout that the wall fell down flat, so that the people went up into the city, every man straight before him. So they didn't have to find a place where it fell in a smaller, right where they were. They've been doing what, by the way? So we're circling, right? So we're circling. And so we've got the place surrounded. So as soon as the walls fall flat, we can all do what? Immediately come into the city. We don't have to find a small channel of opening where we kind of have to funnel, because generally when you got to do it that way, even though you might later on be victorious in that battle, the first few guys through that hole are what? That's bad, right? That's not good. Which, by the way, just a side note, who would that have been? Okay, they're part of that, but in terms of the nation, well, I'm just remember who struck a deal so that they could stay on the other side. Yeah, Reuben, Gad, and half tribe of Manasseh made that agreement that if they could stay on the other side of Jordan, that they would go where? In the front. They would be in the front of these battles as they would enter in. Now, that's going to eventually happen in some of these, but in this particular battle, they don't even have to do that. Everybody's going to get able to go in at the same time because the walls fall flat. But if they had to create just a breach by which they would have entered into Jericho, then those 2.5 tribes would have had to have been the first ones in, because of the agreement that was made in order for them to be allowed to just stay in the land on the other side of Jordan. Anyway, that didn't happen, so it's all whatever. But I thought it was interesting anyway. Yeah. Every angle. Yeah. Yeah. Against an enemy that had no heart to fight. And so it's anyway, it's an interesting scene, to say the least. So obviously their success was overwhelming. They utterly destroyed all that was in the city, both man and woman, young and old, the ox, the sheep, the donkey, that with the edge of the sword. Both Joshua had said unto the two men that had spied out the country, Go into the harlot's house, and bring out thence the woman, and all that she hath, as ye swear unto her. And the young men that were spies went in, and brought out Rahab, and her father, her mother, and her brethren, and all that she had, and they brought out all her kindred, and left them without the camp of Israel. They burnt the city with fire, and all that was therein, only the silver and the gold, and the vessels of brass and of iron, they put into the treasury of the house of the Lord. Joshua saved Rahab the harlot alive, and her father's household, and all that she had, and she dwelleth in Israel even unto this day, because she hid the messengers which Joshua sent to spy out Jericho. We talked earlier about the fact that not only does she now reside with them, but she becomes one of them, even so much so that she becomes part of what? The lineage of Christ. And so she becomes part of that. Anybody happen to go back? I should have done this, and I could probably, if I stood here and with a blank stare on my face for 5 minutes, I might be able to conjure it out of my brain, but I won't bore you with that scene. But does anybody off the top of your head know where she fit in that lineage? Okay, there you go. And so I believe that is correct. Boaz was married to, eventually became married to Ruth. And so you see her in that list back when you connect her to Boaz. And I think you're right, Bill, that you connect her to Boaz and Ruth as it relates to where she fits in that, which is kind of interesting too, because Ruth was she wasn't an Israelite either. But she becomes part of that heritage. And I've always felt it's interesting that very few women listed within that lineage, and two of them were non-Israelites that were part of that Israel, not born anyway that way. So they successfully conquered Jericho. Joshua adjured them at that time, saying, Cursed be the man before the Lord that riseth up and buildeth this city Jericho. He shall lay the foundation thereof in his firstborn, and in his youngest son shall he set up the gates of it. The Lord was with Joshua, and his fame was noised throughout all the country. And so your first successful battle begins to be told to other people in and around the region. And so everybody very quickly is learning about this great military, in their minds, this great military leader that apparently has got this God with him that allowed him to overtake a walled city with basically doing nothing. And so it's amazing when you think, and I shouldn't say not doing anything, because they did what God told them to do and fulfilled those obligations. So if you're running back to your lesson sheets real quick then, as we quickly went through that piece of the history. So Joshua said, shout for what? It's for the Lord is giving you the city. I get. So what were the accursed things that Israel was not to take from Jericho? And we went back real quick and looked at Deuteronomy 7 this morning. The graven image, the idols and things that were made, whether even if it was gold or silver you thought you might benefit from in a personal way, all the gold and silver and everything was going to be put into the treasury and not to be taken for personal gain. What does Rahab's deliverance say about the integrity of the Israelites? Yeah, they did exactly what they had promised to do. From whom had they learned the importance of keeping their word? So that education comes from God. Any other examples that you might have written down? None? No one? Anyone? All right. Let's take God then as the answer if you don't have anything else. Obviously, you're going to have people that maintain their integrity of the things that they had said. So Moses obviously had been a man of integrity, though he has one failure as a relationship with God. But Moses had demonstrated an integrity before them. Joshua's been showing integrity of commitment, and what they've said they did and fulfilled. And so they had other examples. God's instructions came concerning it, but they had plenty of other examples of honoring what it was that they were supposed to do. So the great thing about this is this just starts a conquest of the promised land that just never stops. They're successful from that moment forward. Correct or incorrect? And I'm telling you on the screen already that that's incorrect. Right? It's incorrect. In fact, it takes them all of after one battle to run into their first problem. So, as the outline says, he didn't have long to savor his first victory before problems began to ensue. Go to chapter 7. But the children of Israel committed a trespass in the accursed thing. Now, I want you to notice something about that language. And anyway, something we need to consider. So the text says, the children of Israel committed a trespass in the accursed thing. For Achan, the son of Carmi, the son of Zebdi, the son of Zerai, and of the tribe of Judah, took of the accursed thing, and the anger of the Lord was kindled against the children of Israel. One man's choice has brought consequence to whom? To the whole tribe. Now, let's keep this in balance a little bit. You say, well, that's not, our gut reaction to that might be what? That's not fair. But keep in mind, we're not dealing with people's eternal state. And I think sometimes we make that kind of immediate. So you're telling me that because Achan sinned, none of them are going to heaven. No, that's not what's going on here. This isn't about whether they're going to heaven. This isn't about whether they get to spend eternity in heaven or whether they get to they receive some kind of consequence eternally. This is about a nation of people who had physical responsibilities before the Lord. And yes, the failure of one man brought the whole nation into danger. The actions of one, the consequences of the actions of one, began to affect, or did affect, the entire nation. Now, what's interesting about that is sometimes we think that's unfair, but the fact of the matter is that continues to happen. There are lots of things that a single individual makes a choice or a decision about, and it affects more than just himself and or herself. The consequences of those choices and decisions that people make often then affect everybody else in that particular situation. And that happens, by the way, not just in sad, consequential kind of things, but it happens in just everyday life. You know, in numerous ways. What mom fixed for dinner affected whom? Everybody in the house. Now, I don't ever recall in the entire lifetime that I spent at 102 Wetzel Street that we ever voted on what was for dinner. I don't ever recall that ever happening. Now, my children, they've never mind. I forgot their home. But what mom chose, and that's it. That was what, and it affected everybody in the house. My point is trivial in some ways, but it's simple to try to illustrate this. That passed down. One man's choice, through one man, sin entered. Through one man, sin was answered. That's the whole narrative there in the New Testament. And so keep that in mind when you think about this. This isn't God saying you're not going to. He's just simply saying because one man broke the law as it relates to the accursed things, all of you are going to pay the price for that until you get it rectified, until you address and deal with it. So Joshua sent men. God's upset with them. Joshua sent men from Jericho to Ai, and let me show you that real quick, which is beside Beth Haven. And so you're not talking far. I'll blow this up just a little bit more for you. Maybe you can see. So they come across, remember 13-mile stretch, they cross the Jordan, they conquest Jericho, and now they're just going further, about the same distance, about 13 miles or so, over into Ai, is the next decision of where they're heading in order to continue the conquest of the promised land. So he spoke to them, saying, go up and view the country. And they went up and viewed Ai. And they returned to Joshua and said unto him, let on all the people go up, but let about 2,000 or 3,000 men go up, and smite Ai, and make not all the people to labor thither, for they are but few. So, and maybe we could be careful not to be speculative here in some ways, but this tremendous victory at Jericho has not just made them confident, it may have made them overconfident. Because they send the spies up to Ai, and they see it's just a tiny little place, and there's not a whole lot of folk there. And so they come back to Joshua and say, yeah, let's go do it. We can take care of it. But don't send everybody. We don't need to send the entire army up there. Just send about 2,000 or 3,000 men up there. They're not going to need much more than that in order to do it. So you can almost kind of already see that they're slightly turning away from God will deliver, God will deliver, God will deliver to what they can do. And well, anyway, we're going to find that that's going to create trouble. So there went up thither of the people, those 2,000 or 3,000, about 3,000 men, and they fled before the men of Ai. The men of Ai smote of them about 36 men, for they chased them from before the gate, even unto Shebarim, and smote them in going down, wherefore the hearts of the people melted and became as water. So, one successful victory, one horrible defeat, and now we're what? We're scared, depressed, saddened. Joshua's renting his clothes, falls to the earth at his face before the ark of the covenant until eventime. He and the elders, they put dust upon their heads. Finally, Joshua asked the Lord God, wherefore hast thou at all brought this people over Jordan to deliver us into the hand of the Amorites to destroy us? Would to God we had been content and dwelt on the other side Jordan. It's sad, really, when you think about it, because the first official complaint that gets lodged against God comes from him. The man he chose to lead the people. And whether he's confused or not, right? Whether Joshua is confused about why did you give us this tremendous victory in Jericho, and then we go up to take this little tiny town of Ai, and they whip us from the moment we get there until my men flee from that scene. What's going on here? So the Lord's, O Lord, what shall I say when Israel turneth their backs before their enemies? I mean, we went to fight this little place, and they're already scared when the battle actually comes to them. For the Canaanites and all the inhabitants of the land shall hear of it, and shall environ us round, cut off our name from the earth. What wilt thou do unto thy great name? The Lord said unto Joshua, get thee up, wherefore liest thou thus upon thy face? Israel hath sinned. Who had sinned? Achan. But the consequences of his decisions has fallen now upon all of Israel. So he says, Israel hath sinned. They have also transgressed my covenant, which I commanded them. For they have even taken of the accursed thing, and have also stolen, and dissembled also, and they have put it even among their own stuff. So they took some stuff, they're hiding it amongst their own things. Therefore the children of Israel could not stand before their enemies, but turned their backs before their enemies, because they were accursed. Neither will I be with you anymore, except you destroy the accursed thing from among you. So Joshua learns quickly here what the problem is. Why did they turn and run? Why was Ai successful, Lord? Well, God tells him, well, the reason is it's because I warned you in Deuteronomy 7. I warned you based in the law, and I reminded you, and you reminded the people, don't take the accursed things from Jericho. But they did. And until you address that, I'm not going to be with you. Until you address these issues among the people and sanctify them, then I can't continue to allow you to have successes here into the promised land. So, what's the answer? How do they go about that? So, what's the first layer they bring? Okay, so they bring the tribe, which the Lord taketh shall come according in the families thereof. So you bring the tribe, and they're parceled out into their families. And it shall be, verse 15, that he that is taken with the accursed thing shall be burnt with fire, he and all that he hath, because he hath transgressed the covenant of the Lord, and because he hath wrought folly in Israel. I know in our modern mind that sounds as severe and as barbaric as it could be. But But number one, it's the will of God and not our place to argue it. Number two, it's a capital offense, if you will, and it brings with it a capital punishment. Because it wasn't just simply that they took something. They took something that God said was an abomination to Him. He's been feeding them. He kept them clothed where their clothes never wore out, their shoes never wore out, their bodies never wore out over that 40-year span. He's prepared them and aided them along the way and has right to dictate to them how it is they're going to behave. And so it's a pretty severe consequence, but nonetheless, hopefully it will be a reminder to all of them from that point forward to what happens. So they bring the families together, family of Judah, and he took the family of the Zerites, brought the family of the Zerites man by man, and Zabdi was taken. He brought his household man by man, and Achan, the son of Carmi, the son of Zabdi, the son of Zerah, of the tribe of Judah, was taken. And Joshua asks him, My son, give, I pray thee, glory to the Lord God of Israel, and make confession unto him, and tell me now what thou hast done, hide it not from me. And Achan answered Joshua and said, Indeed, I have sinned against the Lord God of Israel, and thus have I done. And so he explains what it is that he had done. When I saw the spoils of goodly Babylonian garment, or 200 shekels of silver or gold, basically I took it and I hid it in the earth in the midst of my tent. So Joshua sent the messengers to find out what he had been hiding there. They took them out of the midst of the tent, brought them unto Joshua and all the children of Israel, and laid them out before the Lord. Joshua and all Israel with him, and took Achan the son of Zerah, the silver, the garments, the wedge of gold, his sons, his daughters, his oxen, his donkeys, his sheep, his tent, everything, all that he had, and they brought them unto the valley of Achor. And Joshua said, Why hast thou troubled us? The Lord shall trouble thee this day. And all Israel stoned him with stones, and burned them with fire after they had stoned him with stones. And they raised over him a great heap of stones unto this day. So the Lord turned from the fierceness of his anger. Wherefore the name of that place was called the Valley of Achor unto this day. Again, it's brutal, it's difficult and challenging, but it's an early severe lesson that the Israelites are going to have to learn quickly. That if they're going to have success in the conquest of the Promised Land, number one, they're going to need who? They're going to need God. That got proven day two, not literal day two, but the second battle. They learned that quickly, that they try to do it on their own. A couple thousand men of ours, we can be able to go up with Ai, no problem. Let's send them up there. But not so. They're going to need God. And if they abandon the covenant and the law as it relates to the instructions of God, then they're not going to have success. And you would hope that this one moment in time would then educate them to remember the next time somebody thinks about grabbing a Babylonian garment or some gold or some silver, the family of Achan would jump to their mind as soon as it happened and the consequence that he faced. Yeah. 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 You get the individuals to honor the covenant of God, then the people as a whole will be honoring